Righty, what's going on, everybody? Just me here today, Mike. Thank God, no Joe, right? I know. Anyways, I'm just gonna get right into it. I'm gonna do a tier list of Max projects. Um, for me, this list changes a lot as the months go on, and I just kind of had like a new revelation, if that's the right word, lately about a couple projects of his, and so I felt like now was a kind of cool time. I'll probably update these like within the next couple of months, just because it's just kind of what I do. Um, but before I preface this, I want to start with like his earlier mixtapes, his like side EPs and things like that. I'm not counting. So I'm really just sticking to like his commercial mixtapes and his albums. I just wanted to get that out the way. Uh, yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna start off with his breakout mixtape, Kids. Um, I love this project, man. I didn't hear about Mac until around Best Day Ever time. So like I had just missed this era, but it quickly became one of my favorites looking back at it. I think that it gives this it's kind of interesting because it gives this nostalgic vibe everybody can feel, like it almost feels as if everybody lived the same life, because that no matter how old you are, that Kids mixtape just seems to be so nostalgic for everybody. I don't think it's as creative and artistic as his later projects, which is why it's kind of hard to rank it, because it's like it has a lot of S tier moments on it, like Nike's on My Feet, Spins, Poppy, Senior Skip Day, Kool Aid and Frozen Pizza. It's just a really solid nostalgic mixtape that, it's just something you can always put on and it just feels good. It just feels good. And because of that, I'm gonna put it at the A. I think it's worthy of the A. Now, moving on. One of the probably the It's funny, Best Day Ever is the more nostalgic project for me, just because like I remember specifically my boy, shout out to Mike G, he showed me the Donald Trump music video when it first came out. I remember on his iPhone, and I would just watch it and like amaze. I like it felt nostalgic at that time, if that makes sense. And he was saying a lot of things that, you know, in hindsight weren't as relatable as I thought, but I don't know. It just seemed really cool. But as the years go on, like if this was like 2015, 2016, like this probably would have been like my second favorite Mac project. Today it's definitely dipped down a bit. I think the highs are really high, like both of the best day evers I love. All around the world, Get Up, In the Air, uh what's the song when I get old? I'm gonna be Life Ain't Easy. Like it has a lot of highs and it has a lot of top tier moments, but it also does have a couple misses for me. Um, I think I'm gonna put it at the B. I'm gonna put it at a B right there. Okay. Next up, we have Mac's debut album, Blue Slide Park. Now, another project that did dip down as time went on for me, but I feel like where I'm gonna put this as a ranking doesn't really say like how much I do love some songs on this album, and I think some of these songs are some of Mac's best. Honestly, I mean, Missed Calls, I think you could still put up there with any Mac song from from his later work. Um, Man in the Hat is still classic. Pennsylvania Nights for me. I love English Lane. They're of the soul. There's a lot of great moments on here, but ultimately it was a lot of the same. There was no real, I feel like, evolution from his earlier projects. And I do feel like Kids and Best Day Ever are better. Like I feel like they're just better versions of Blue Slide Park, even though we still got some great classic moments on there. And I do revisit a couple of the songs from time to time a lot. So with that being said, it's gonna hurt me to do this, but I'm gonna put it at a C. I'm gonna put it at a C. Okay, so next up we have I Love Life, Thank You. Now, for those OG Mac fans, if you remember, I forget exactly how much, but it was every time he hit or he was getting closer to like a million or something, he was dropping a song each time, I think. And then once he got to a million followers, he dropped this as like a mixtape. Recently, went on the streaming platforms, which I thought was pretty cool to see like people kind of rediscover Love Lost, which is like a it's like the Spins in a way, like that kind of like nostalgic OG Mac bop. Um, I wasn't really a big fan of this when it first dropped, outside of a few songs. I will say this about the project. It has grown on me. I do listen to a decent amount of the songs. However, I still don't feel like it lights a candle to me because you got to think about it. In this era, right? Like kids is like the bar, I feel like, and the albums that followed up until a certain point didn't really match up. Because it was like, as much as I do love a couple songs on here, it's like, oh, you know what? I could just listen to kids though and get this in like a better version, you know? So yeah, I'll tell you what, I would have put this at a D a couple of years ago, but I'm gonna put it at a C. I do think Blue Slide Park is a stronger effort than it. Um, but yeah. So now this kind of sparks. Take a sip of this real quick. This kind of sparks the end of that specific era for Mac's music, I would say. Because what we would get next is 2012's Macadelic mixtape, which was kind of, Mac wasn't really feeling the greatest of how his music was getting reviewed, and he wanted to be taken seriously as an artist, and so he dropped Macadelic, and artistically, this was a project that he needed to drop. Like he really. I'm trying to think. Like it was a different sound. This sound was necessary to get to what we would end up with later on. And I think that although it doesn't quite hit the mark for like a top tier Mac album, you start to see glimpses of like extreme highs, like Thoughts from a Balcony, Fight the Feeling, The Question, Desperado, Angels, Clarity, like are all top tier songs. However, for me personally, there is a couple misses. And I think that if we're judging it with where Mac took it, there's much better versions of that sound. It's kind of similar to, Kids is the bar for these albums that are on the tier list now. With that being said, I'm going to put Macadelic at a C, but I do think it's better than I Love Life. Thank you. And I also do think it's better than Blue Slide. So it's going to go at the top of the C range there. So that was 2012. We would hear from Mac again in 2013 with his second studio album, Watching Movies with the Sound Off. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where Mac Miller drops his first S tier project. I believe this for many reasons. I mean, this track list isn't flawless, but it's close. And even the tracks that you might not really enjoy necessarily, they're still very interesting. And you could tell he was just on a different creative path, and you just really were interested to like see where he would take it next. And I remember when this album dropped, there was a decent amount of songs that I went to, but looking back on it now, it's pretty. I think it's a testament to how good Mac is, because I don't know how at 13 I was digesting some of these songs and liking it. I feel like if anybody else would have put out like something like the Star Room, I don't think I would have even given it the time of day, really. But I was so invested in Mac as a fan, and the more and more I listened to it, just the more I loved it. You started to get like real deep cuts, like Objects in the Mirror. You got to see inside his mind with like Aquarium, like just the things he was saying, like it was things that I always thought in my head, like it was like I often wonder what happened 3,000 years ago. I like to toy with the idea that we even know. Is what I do important in the grand scheme of things? In my head, these dreams are dreamt. Trust me, we are kings. And I'm wearing a blindfold. Like, where did the time go? I know you hear me out there. Give me a sign. No. And like the production on this is so euphoric. Shout out to the song Euphoria. Um, it's so heavenly, but there's a darkness to it at the same time. I don't know. There's just a lot going on from the album cover to just the sequencing itself to the features. I got introduced to a lot of artists for the first time in this album, as I'm sure most people did. But yeah, man, what an album! What an album! That's an S tier. So then, about a year after that, we would get what people arguably think is his greatest piece of work, or a lot. There's definitely a big crowd of that. Um, which is Faces, 2014 mixtape. Now, this is a mixtape that you got to really be invested in Mac, and you got to really be able to like you got to listen to this a lot to really just understand how good this is. And I'm not one of those people who like are like, oh, you got to listen to this album a million times and then you'll get it. But I guess what I'm saying is like you discover new things with each listen. Like I remember upon arrival, I wasn't a big fan of it because, I just felt like when you're just listening and vibing to it, it doesn't sound like, and I don't want to say that it doesn't sound like anything too different, but it was like it seemed high energy, it seemed like it was just laid back, drugged out raps, and then I remember about a year later, it was after or around the time Good AM dropped, which we will get to, um, that I just really I was like, you know what, I get it. Like the more and more I listened to it, I was like, man, this is like dark, but like, I love it, but I love how bright it felt at times, and it was just so brutally honest and especially lyrically, man. I don't know. I don't know how you're able to capture that emotion in production and then match it with the lyrics and it be so opposite, but it fits, you know? I don't have, I mean, I don't really know what else more to say about it. I know some of my favorites just right off the rip is Here We Go, Grand Finale, New Faces, obviously Diablo, Therapy is a bop, Rain, Insomniac. I mean, this album is, again, in my opinion, it's not flawless. It's not flawless, but it's damn near close. So this is going to be another S tier project for me, and I do put it above watching movies. Um, so we'll see if it stays. So after this, it would be about another year, like a year and a half, really, until we really heard from Mac again. And obviously, if you listen to Faces, he was going through a tough, difficult time. And I remember when he started doing interviews for Good AM, I was really excited because he just seemed like he was in a great space. And, around that time, the word on the street was just kind of like, man, Mac just makes drugged out rap now. And he's like depressed and miserable and all this. And, I remember him going on a promo and press run for Good AM. And I was like, I'm so excited to hear what he has. I like the singles. I know he dropped 100 Grandkids first. I can't think about what he dropped second. Because I don't think Weekend came out till the album came out. Maybe In the Bag or some or one of those. But so when this album dropped, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Like specifically Brand Name, Weekend, Godspeed. Like Brand Name, even to me, still I think you could argue is like a top 5, top 3 Mac Miller song. And as the years went on, I liked it, but I never I never put it in that vein of certain other albums, just because I just felt like something about it missed the mark. I loved how positive the vibe was, and I felt like he had went. I felt like this was the like mature version of kids. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but like that kind of happy vibes from Mac. And then very recently, I did go back to it again, and I was like, man, this album is so much more layered. Like, and also too, unfortunately, due to his passing, this was like the last rap album we got from Mac. So this is technically Mac at his like peak performance rap wise, and like obviously not introspective wise in the music and lyrics, but lyrically rap wise. And I listened back to it the other day, man, and I was like, man, this has everything. What was I talking about? Um, yeah, I just really do love this album, and I don't think it gets put up there with the S tier projects. However, I think it deserves that nod, and I didn't come to that conclusion until a couple days ago. But this album was part of the reason why I wanted to do a Mac Miller tier list, because I feel like people need to understand that Good AM needs to be put up there with these albums. It is an S tier album. It's not better than Faces, but I do have it over watching movies right now. Alrighty then. Speaking of S tier albums, he would come back a year later after that with The Divine Feminine. And because I was so hyped and excited, uh, or no, not let me rephrase that. Because I loved Good AM so much on Arrival, that when he had came back about a year later, he popped back up with the first single, Dang. I was like, man, I was so overjoyed, because I was just like, oh my God, like, what is he about to do? And usually I would get turned off by artists going in a different direction. But I was intrigued. I was intrigued to see where Mac was going to go. And I loved the singles. He dropped Dang, then he dropped We, then he dropped my favorite part with Ariana. We also had a Seal Arena on it, Fire. But I don't know. There was just, I was excited for it. And then I remember listening to it, and I loved it on Arrival, you know? And the thing I actually think is really cool is my favorite songs from when they initially dropped are still my favorite songs. Cinderella, Stay, God is Fair, um, Congratulations. I really do think that this is like one of Mac's strongest efforts. And he was able to carry one emotion throughout a whole album. And I also think that's really cool. And I remember him saying in the Good AM interviews how he wanted to like make a project about love because he felt like he hadn't really touched on it in that way before. And he literally did just that. And so, not much to really say. The production on this album is arguably his best. Um, and yeah, S tier album. And it is better than everything I have listed up there thus far. Shout out to the Divine Feminine. So Mac would take 2017 off musically, which was weird for us Mac heads, because I mean he had been going since he started. Every year he had dropped something, every single year, usually multiple things. If you include like side projects, EPs, or just things on SoundCloud, but it was very quiet. And I remember he tweeted something like beginning of 2018. It was like a GIF or a GIF, whatever it's called. And he was like, "This is how we're gonna be jamming out to my music all year." And I just remember being really hyped about that. And so I always kept that in the back of my head. I was like, "All right, Mac's coming this year," like. So then it got quiet again, and then obviously the Ariana Grande breakup happened, and then the DUI happened, and I remember being pretty upset at that news, because I know Mac had been sober the last time that we saw him, and I just remember being like, damn, like I hope he's good, I hope he's all right. And I remember he dropped a 3-pack, Programs, Small Worlds, and Buttons. And I really like Programs on Arrival. These days, I think I like Buttons more than those three. But yeah, it was cool. It was fun to see Mac was back, you know, and he was making all different types of music again. And so then he dropped Self Care, I remember, and that music video. And I was like, okay, like this is cool. You know, I'm interested to see where it goes. And he had dropped the same day as Travis Scott in August 2018. And I remember I was away on a vacation with a couple of my friends at the time. This was after my senior year of high school. I just graduated, and everybody was so hyped to listen to Astroworld. And first thing I did was throw on Swimming and, you know, Come Back to Earth. And I'll be honest with you, like my initial emotion of the album was it was cool, you know. I off the rip, 2009 was I knew was just one of those, like one of those S tier Mac songs, you know. But there was definitely a lot of songs that took a while to grow on me, and unfortunately, it was after his passing. Um, I think as time went on, and I feel like everyone kind of had this revelation too with Swimming, and I know what people say, like people do say, oh yeah, Mac's death like helped people see how good Swimming is, but I don't know. I feel like it was just one of those albums that like over time was just going to age well. Like that happens with a lot of music, especially an artist who's dropping something that's like out of his realm, not out of his realm, but out, you know, something you maybe would not have been expecting. Nevertheless, I do. Let me just get this out of the bag. I do think it's an S tier album, um, and I don't think anything would have changed that. The music speaks for itself. The messaging speaks for itself. From Come Back to Earth to So It Goes, you can play it front to back. And it's got a little bit of everything in there. At times it is a little sad, but there's good in it too. You know, there's definitely a lot of good that I've been able to find in it too. And so I'm gonna put it over all of these albums that are in here. Um, yeah, shout out to Swimming, man. Shout out to Swimming. So then 2 years later, we would get a nice little surprise, and we would get a posthumous album from Mac. Um, the Record Circles, and what an album. What an album. I love this album so much. The only thing that bothers me is I feel like we would have gotten this in a much more complete form if Mac was still here. So that does hinder the way I do view this album. And I know a lot of people think I'm crazy for probably where I place it. They would probably think it's too low. But please understand, I love this album. I think the song Hand Me Downs is a top three Mac Miller song. I really do. I love that song so much. I love most of the records on here. I just feel like some of it sounds like, I don't know. Either I don't know if Mac would have released that, or I don't know if he would have kept it like that. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion. Beautiful record though. You know, definitely the greatest posthumous hip hop record ever. That's not even really up for debate. I feel like um, it was handled so well, and I'm happy that they're gonna leave it like this with his as far as his albums go and his discography. I like how they've been doing, like, for example, the Kids Deluxe. I like when they do things like that, because back in the day, in A have become some of my favorite Mac songs, and those were bonus cuts. I hope that they continue doing that for anniversaries, like dropping some bonus tracks that we maybe have never heard before from that time. Like they did that with watching movies too, even though I feel like a lot of us have heard that OG Star Room, but still, it was nice. Um, but yeah, so it was an S tier moment, but I'm gonna put the album at an A, above Kids. Um, so yeah, this is where I stand with my ranking for Mac albums or Mac projects. Let me know what you guys think below. Again, my opinion changes every 6 months, but this seems about this seems about right to me at this point in my life. I know 5 S tier albums seems like a lot, but that boy was good, man. That boy was good. Rest in peace to Malcolm McCormick, gone but not forgotten. Um, yeah. So I don't know. This probably isn't going to release by the time me and Joe have connected. He's coming out here to visit me for a weekend, and we're going to be doing a bunch of cool, fun stuff. If that already happened, cool. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If not, um, stay tuned and look forward to it because we got a lot of cool things in store, and I'm excited for it. He's excited for it, and yeah. Until the next time, I'll catch y'all.